In him was life, and life is the light of men. And then the Word became flesh and dwelt in us. It's translated among us. Forget it. I'm not denying that he is among us in those in whom he has awakened. But don't then turn out. If you think now he's among us, and you turn to one in whom you believe, and think now he's walking among us, you're going to miss the point. He dwelt in us. He is still dwelling in us. And that in us is the grass. And then whatever you think of the one who's told you his story, you're going to have the identical story. But don't turn out and think in terms of another, so then you're going to turn and worship something on the outside. I cannot deny that it has happened in me. I do not deny that. But then if you turn to me as one on the outside that differs, who walks among us, you're going to miss the point. The preposition is in us. It's translated in all translations, why I don't know, but it actually is in us. But they're translated among us, and he dwelt among us. The minute you hear that, you're going to start looking around. Where is he? And then someone will say, there he is. He had the experience. But then you're going to start making an idol out of him, or idol out of her. That's not the point. The Word became flesh and dwelt. It's past tense. And dwelt in us. Well now, let the grass take place. The grass is taking place. And as it takes place in good times, in the fullness of time, he then sends his Son into our hearts, calling Father, in the fullness of time. That is the flower coming out. And he stands before you. And here, you've always known it. But you didn't know it to the extent you know it now. Because when you participated in the life of the tree of life, you were not aware of being the Father. All this was part of you. You were in a perfect state. But only through that bruising of you, by detaching you and sending you out to be attached to human nature, could you actually have the experience of being God the Father. So then you come out, and you are attached to human nature, and no one will tell you, more than you know yourself, what hell you have to go through. If you read that 53rd chapter, you wonder, how on earth could a God of love do it? And only a God of love could do it, when he detaches his own bud, his own Son, and implants him on the horror of human nature, knowing that all the pain he's going to suffer, for it was the will of the God to bruise him, and that all the bruising was for a purpose, and in the end, he is God himself. For in the end, there can be no more than God the Father. So he takes us all together that he has chosen. Not all did he choose. There were those who would not come out. For you'll read it carefully, and you'll see it was a voluntary act on the part of the bud. But no one took away my life. I laid it down myself. I had the power to lay it down and the power to lift it up again. If you read it carefully, you will see it was not someone grabbing the other one, as my mother took the bud without its consent. This was a consent on our part, but not all consented. The joy of remaining and participating in the life, in a perfect sense, in the tree of life, is still too great for all to consent. You and I consented. So when he gave himself, as you're told in the Word, and when he made himself a sin offering, and I offer myself to redeem human nature. But to redeem it, I couldn't pretend I am human. I had to become human. I came right down into the state called humanity. Identified myself with it and wear a mask, and they call it Neville. and I go through the world playing the part of Neville. But I can't pretend I am. I have to be every moment of my life just a man, human being. And then, as it grows, I am feeding first. I started feeding on the sap of human nature. And then I continue, and I grow. Then came that moment in time, 12 years ago this year, when it was time for the fruit to appear. And the fruit appeared. And then, over a period of 1,260 days, it kept on appearing. And all that is said of my Father, then I experienced, and I knew, the purpose of the detachment and being sent into human nature. Now share it with all those who also have been detached. Don't crow, don't brag about it, just tell it, for all are going to have the identical experience.